A bomb explodes in the Hormuz Strait. Emergency reports the word terrorism on the lips of the American president. The whole world instantly reads the situation the same way. Iran strikes the West again. Iran versus America. An old but familiar story. And now I'll suggest a different reading of the same picture. What if this bomb isn't about America at all? It has nothing to do with it. What if it's not flying toward a tanker or an American aircraft carrier, but toward the negotiating table? And in Tehran at that. What if the most dangerous enemy of the Iran deal isn't sitting in Washington or in Beijing or in Moscow, but in Iran itself? This isn't just a figure of speech. This is the version that today is cautiously, almost in a whisper, being voiced by the very mediators who are trying to save this deal. And if it's true, then everything we thought about this crisis needs to be turned upside down. Well, let's figure it out. There is a memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran. This is the framework from which a new nuclear deal was supposed to grow. And this framework is now, to put it mildly, bursting at the seams. Trump at some point declares the memorandum over, and he gives the order for 2 rounds of strikes, airstrikes. In response, attacks on Saudi ships in the Hormuz Strait resume. Trump calls these attacks acts of terrorism. Well, then suddenly there's a lull. On Thursday, there don't seem to be any new American strikes. A whole bunch of mediators are flocking to the region. Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, you name it, they're all there. All of them are frantically urging both sides not to break the agreements. And here's what's especially interesting. Even under rocket fire, even in the midst of mutual accusations, and those were some serious accusations if you remember. Yes, according to reports, technical level negotiations are ongoing. That is the lower-ranking officials. Well, or high-ranking, of course, but still lower level. They know there's some kind of war going on, but they just do their job. Something just doesn't add up for me. Even with all this, if both sides really want war, why continue negotiations? And if they want peace, then who is shooting at the tankers right at the moment when a deal is within reach? This is the question where our reversed version begins. Inside out, backwards. I don't know how else to put it. Pay attention to one detail, which is usually glossed over in the breaking news. Iran didn't claim responsibility for the attacks on the ships here in Hormuz. It didn't admit it. He didn't sign his name to it, so to speak. And that's not a small thing. Usually when a state wants to say something to the world by force, it actually wants people to know where it came from. There it is. That's actually the whole point of the signal. But there are strikes here. Is there an author? No. Where the signature should be. It was blank. The intermediaries fill that void with their own version. According to their interpretation, the attacks in Hormuz were carried out, and I quote, by elements within the Iranian regime itself who are against the memorandum and want to disrupt it. The point is that one part of the Iranian state struck against the policy of another part of the Iranian state. That the bombs in the Strait were not a shot outward, but inward. Not against the enemy across the sea, but against their own negotiators at the table. Then it becomes clear why there is no author. The one who did this does not have a mandate. He cannot come out and say, it was me, because formally he is undermining the decision of his own government. This is one of the most recognizable scenarios in the history of any peace negotiations, or even peace processes, I would say. It even has a name. Political scientists call such players spoilers. Spoil means to ruin. So basically those who ruin the game, right? And the logic of a spoiler is always the same. He blows things up not when peace is far away, but exactly when peace is near, when it's close. Because for him, for some reason, peace being close is scarier than war. Remember Oslo. Early 90s Israelis and Palestinians shake hands for the first time on the White House lawn. And what happens next? A wave of terrorist attacks. Well, exactly according to schedule. Every time the sides take a step toward each other, there's an explosion. Sometimes on a bus, sometimes at the market. The radicals, they're actually always targeting the same thing. Wherever the explosions happen, they're attacking the possibility of reaching an agreement. The year 1995. So Yitzhak Rabin was killed. And he wasn't killed by an Arab, a Muslim, or an Islamist. It was one of his own, yes, an Israeli radical who considered peace to be betrayal. The bullet came from within. A spoiler always shoots his own in the back. He coldly understands that as long as the war goes on, he's a hero, a defender, a necessary force. But as soon as peace comes, who is he then? He's nobody. Peace cancels him out. And that's why peace is a personal threat to him, to his entire existence. Now let's move from my philosophical reflections to Iran. The situation in Hormuz is no longer a mystery. A spoiler never strikes in a vacuum. It strikes on schedule, on someone else's schedule, according to the negotiation calendar. It exploded not in the midst of war, but several months after the peace was signed. Buses in Israel didn't explode on random days, but exactly when both sides were taking another step toward each other. The bullet that hit Rabin didn't come when the peace process was failing, but at its peak. In a square full of people who came to support peace. A spoiler needs the moment when a deal is closest, because that's when his blow causes the most pain. Blowing up negotiations that are already stalling is pointless, but undermining them a second before signing, that's it. Art. That's real pleasure. Now look at Hormuz. The strike doesn't come at the moment of complete rupture, but exactly when the intermediaries have gathered, when technical negotiations are underway, when the deal, against all odds, has become possible again. The explosion will come exactly when peace is closest. This doesn't look like blind rage, it looks calculated. In the choice of timing. By a person or people who are watching very closely the very table they're about to overturn. And now, the most important thing, the background, without which you can't understand the tension. All of this is happening after the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, a man who for decades was the sole arbiter, the final authority who put out these internal conflicts. But he's gone now. The radicals blame, well, directly Trump for his death. That's right, isn't it? It was Trump who gave the order, Dranka on his tail. And in the leader's place comes Mojtaba Khamenei, who, well, for now, we don't know, so to speak, whether that's because he can't or because he doesn't want to. But for now, he is avoiding clarity on the nuclear issue and clearly hasn't consolidated power yet. Maybe he can't, we don't know, but he hasn't consolidated it. What does a spoiler do in this situation? He doesn't go to argue in Parliament, right? Even in Constantinople, Congress doesn't pass a new law, it does what it does best. It causes an explosion. He shoots. Explosion in Hormuz with no known perpetrator. A pragmatic government that negotiates while at the same time hinting that the strikes were authorized by people other than those at the table. A hardline faction for whom the deal is deadly dangerous. A new supreme leader who still can't rein everyone in. And the classic one. And the pattern repeated 1,000 times in history. Radicals blow things up exactly when peace is near to prevent it. In this logic, a strike on a tanker or tankers is not Washington's message, it's a message to Tehran. More precisely, it's a double message, not pragmatism. You are not in control of the situation. Your deal is worthless. And to the Americans as well. Look who you're trying to make a deal with. These people can't be trusted. With one shot. Boom. Both pillars of the deal are hit at once. Trust at the table and trust in the process itself. And you know what's most insidious? He doesn't even have to win this argument openly. It's enough for him if the deal falls through. No result is his victory. As long as there's no peace, he remains necessary. There were attacks on ships in Hormuz. Trump called them acts of terrorism. The memorandum is under threat. Mediators rushed in to save it. Iran officially, that is, did not claim responsibility for the attacks. Inside Iran, there really are, well, factions, yes, for whom the deal is unacceptable. The supreme leader has changed. The power has not yet stabilized. These are all facts, 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 facts. And now, here's a theory. It's exactly the link between them. The idea that the attacks were carried out by a specific internal faction to disrupt the negotiations is the interpretation of intermediaries and a logical reconstruction, but not a proven fact. Iran did not admit it. No one has presented specific names with evidence. Maybe these are spoilers. Or maybe it's an authorized signal that Tehran finds it beneficial to present as an independent initiative. Or maybe it's something completely different we haven't seen yet. That's why the honest way to put it is, it's not "this is what happened," but rather this is a version that explains the facts better than the usual one. And the strength of this version isn't that it's proven, but that it asks the right question. Not why Iran is fighting with America, but who inside Iran doesn't want peace, and what they're willing to blow up for that. Because if you learn to spot the spoiler, you'll stop looking at such crises as a duel between two flags. You'll start to see the third party, the one who isn't sitting at the table but has their hand on the detonator. And in the end, the one for whom peace is scarier than war. This is a very important point that we all need to remember. For whom peace is scarier than war. And now I'm going to tell you something that will strengthen our theory tenfold. Here's a question I'll leave you with at this point, so to speak, at the end of this segment. Although all of this isn't just one, not segments, but still, so simple. Next time someone launches a strike on the enemy, ask yourself, did the bomb really fly outward? Maybe it was aimed inward from the very beginning. And here's another detail that adds credibility to the spoiler version for us. We asked a question. Who inside Iran doesn't want peace so much that they're willing to blow up ships in their own strait? We called this player a spoiler, the one who ruins the deal, because peace cancels him out, him, the spoiler. But the spoiler only has ideology, faith. And today we will give him something that explains behavior much more reliably than any faith. What explains behavior more reliably than any faith is your wallet, what's in your pocket. Money. Because there is a paradox in this story that almost no one puts on the front page, but it lies at the very foundation of everything. In general, money usually lies at the very foundation of everything. Look, blocking the Hormuz Strait, blowing up tankers, sowing chaos in this narrow bottleneck. Whose oil does that hit first and foremost? And I'll tell you, it's Iran's oil. Almost all of Iran's oil exports go through the Hormuz Strait. This is the lifeblood of the Iranian economy, its main and essentially only major source of income. A rational state that lives off oil sales would not mine its own artery, vein, or, capillary. So, either Iran is acting irrationally or we misunderstood something. Misunderstood what? Whose interests are these? That's what we misunderstood. And no, you're simply asking the main question in every investigation. Who benefits from this? Where did the money go? The picture magically flips again, so let's follow the money. Years of Western sanctions have cut Iran off from almost all normal markets. Iranian oil basically has only one major buyer left, China. It's estimated that about 90% of Iran's oil exports go there. Not to Europe, not to Japan, to China. But it doesn't get there the way normal oil does in the normal world. Officially, this trade barely exists. It's under sanctions. That's why it moves in the shadows. And here's where things start to get interesting. In the shadows? Yes, that doesn't mean it's small. In the shadows just means by different rules. By rules that let someone make a lot of money. Think about that. As soon as there's a bottleneck, someone starts making a lot of money from it. Let's break down this machine layer by layer. First layer, buyers. These aren't giants like state-owned oil companies that are afraid of getting hit by secondary U.S. sanctions. No, these are small ones. Independent, the so-called small Chinese refineries. There are plenty of them. Their name is Legion. Second layer, delivery. Shadow fleet. A flotilla of tankers that change names, change flags, forge ship documents, and in the middle of a voyage turn off their transponders and disappear from the radar. Oil is transferred at sea from ship to cover their tracks. On paper, the destination is listed as Malaysia, Singapore, or Vietnam. Sometimes it's completely unknown. We're moving oil without knowing the destination. Then comes the third layer, money. Money flows, direct payments under sanctions. Well, at the very least, they're complicated, right? That's why settlements aren't done through the front companies, but through some tricky schemes like infrastructure in exchange for oil. Chinese firms build in Iran, and in return, they get paid with crude. Yes, so to speak, crude oil. A network of shell companies in Hong Kong and in the Emirates disguises the origin of every barrel. And now here's a billion-dollar question, literally. Who owns this whole operation? Who has their hand on all these channels? The ones oil flows through, the ones it moves through from ship to ship, and the ones money flows through, all the pipelines. And here everything comes together at one point. According to experts, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that very security apparatus we talked about, controls about half of all revenues from Iranian oil exports. Half. This is oil revenue from China. Essentially, it directly funds his operations and his network of allies in the region. Think about what that means. The people who hold the most powerful weapons inside Iran are also the ones who control the biggest faucet. Oil money, and this spigot operates only within the shadow sanctions regime, and now comes the key turning point. The key turning point of our analysis. Let's ask ourselves a simple question. What happens to this machine if the Americans and Europeans suddenly lift the sanctions? Oh, great, says Iran. My God, everything is falling apart, says the Corps, because the shadow economy exists precisely because it is in the shadows. When oil is under a ban, not everyone trades it, only those who have a fleet, a ghost fleet. Shell companies, connections, it's a tight club. Competitors? There are no competitors there. There's only one buyer, takes with a big discount, but quietly and steadily. And those who stand between the Iranian oil well and the Chinese factory take their cut. That means for secrecy, for risk, for knowing how to move a barrel under the radar. Sanctions. Sanctions aren't a curse for them. Sanctions are their bread and butter. It's a business model. It's a wall that keeps everyone out except them and gives them billions. Lift the sanctions, and then what? The oil comes out into the open. It starts being traded openly, transparently on the open market at global prices, through regular banks, for dollars. The discount disappears. Secrecy has lost its value since there's nothing left to hide. Just keep transporting. The shadow fleet turns into a bunch of old tankers that aren't as profitable as the new ones. The front companies become empty shells. The club of insiders, which had been creaming off the top for years, suddenly finds itself no longer needed. Their monopoly evaporates the very day the sun of normal trade rises over Iran. Do you think they want peace? There it is, the paradox. Turned inside out. For the Iranian people, for the Iranian economy, lifting the sanctions is salvation. It's the removal of a curse. But for those who got rich from the sanctions, it's a disaster. It's a threat to their existence. It's the end of the gravy train. Now connect this with what we've already talked about. Look at how these two puzzles, so to speak, fit together and explain each other. In the first part, we had someone playing spoiler. Yes, the faction that disrupts the peace deal only had an ideological motive. Peace cancels us. Peace makes us unnecessary. It's beautiful but abstract. We hate imperialists. We won't let ourselves be despised, and so on. Actually, when it comes to being despised, you can put up with it. No one despises you, of course, and you make a lot of money. And now that same spoiler turns out to have a little motive as well. Very concrete, very tangible, very much about dollars. Peace is not just a blow to his pride. Peace is a blow to his wallet. Direct and concrete, gentlemen. Not pennies, but billions. Lifting sanctions doesn't take away his influence in theory, it takes away his money. In practice, it's that very half of the oil revenue, gentlemen, that one can only dream of. And now the explosion in Hormuz is no longer a mystery because it has a perfect beneficiary. I used a smart word there, didn't I? A sabotage deal. Sanctions stay, the gravy train rolls on. Instability in the Strait isn't a loss for a black market trader. It's a markup. The more dangerous it is to sail through the Strait of Hormuz, the more valuable the person who can still get your tanker through. The logic of it is monstrous. The person who bombs the Strait and the person who gets rich off Iranian oil, turns out they're the same person, not two different people. It's him. The more he bombs, the richer he gets. Do you think he'll stop bombing? He fires at a tanker and immediately, so to speak, with the other hand gives himself a bonus for the increased risk. He's not sabotaging the Iranian economy, he's milking it. He's milking the shadow side, the shadow version, squeezing it. And normal, legal, transparent Iranian oil. It turns into his worst enemy because that's exactly what ruins him. And they're trying to sign some kind of memorandum there, while my money is leaving and could be gone altogether. Otherwise, I won't let you make any peace here. Okay, we're not claiming that we have proof in our hands that strike number so-and-so was ordered by a person with such and such a last name. A motive is not the same as evidence, of course, and the possibility of benefit is not the same as proven guilt, but it's very similar. That's it. Well, you know, this framework following the money, so to speak, it doesn't really require you to take anyone's word for it. It just makes you ask a question that too often goes unasked. We all love to say that phrase, but then for some reason we just zone out and even forget about it, right? When they show you an explosion and say, this is hatred, this is ideology, these are irrational fanatics, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't believe they're irrational fanatics. They're actually quite rational accountants. They're losing money on this, and then everything becomes clear to me. Who gave themselves a bonus while the tanker was burning? Who would be worse off if peace came tomorrow? It's actually all quite simple, gentlemen, and most importantly, it follows logic, not ideology. Oh, that's what they're like. They're ideologues. They're not ideologues at all. They're children. 4,000 children of Iranian mullahs, and all those others who are shooting. Yes, they sit in America and England, and they post things like that on their Instagrams and other social media. I don't know, yeah, even our American, suffragettes, the suffragette types, well, they're stunned with embarrassment. So next time you hear about another blow in the name of the struggle, a blow in the name of ideology, ask yourself this question. Not what they believe in, but how much are they making from it? And it's very possible that the bomb presented to you as a shot at the enemy is actually fired at a competitor. And in this case, the competitor is their own people who dared to try to live a normal life. That's us they're targeting, if people can live normally on their earnings. Ladies and gentlemen, subscribe and like if this video story is interesting to you if you find here. We have such points of view, a little different from 99.9% of what you see on the internet and on TV. So, you are welcome. Yes, be sure to hit the bell, so it rings. Then we can practically guarantee that we will show you everything. Goodbye, see you next time.